Hello, Three Mics Nation. I'm Andrew Kozix alongside Aiden Power and Patrick Stevenson. We're coming off an exciting week and weekend of college football. Let's get right into it. We've got a lot on our plate today, so here we go. Aiden, let's start with that Notre Dame-Virginia game. I know you're a big Irish fan. What did you see there
Yeah, that was a real nail-biter for the Irish. Obviously the big story coming out of this one, it's great that Notre Dame was able to sneak out a win, but a huge loss for them, losing their quarterback, Malik Zaire. He broke his ankle. Looks like he's going to be out for the season. Really tough loss because this is a team that doesn't really have a second-string quarterback. Obviously, Deshaun Kaiser. I can't really – he came in. He threw a great game-winning touchdown pass, but really concerned about this Irish team going into the future, especially with a tough game coming up this week.
And Deshaun Kaiser looked good in the limited action he saw. He actually put up better completion percentage than Malik Zaire and put up good numbers, passing for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. But it's a lot of question marks here. That's very limited action. We'll see how he does in coming weeks. And a bit of a letdown performance for Notre Dame compared to the hype that came out of last week from the big win over Texas to get edged by a team like Virginia who got blown out by UCLA a week ago. It might hurt the Irish in the rankings.
Yeah, obviously we saw Notre Dame being able to escape this one very narrowly. We saw them go 0 for 10 on third down. Aiden, what do you think that's going to mean for the Irish come the rest of the season?
Well, you know what? They're not going to be successful in the rest of the season if they're not successful on third down. I think a big issue for them, not only losing Malik Zaire, but also losing their starting running back in week 1. I think this is a team that has really lost its identity offensively, and they're going to have to rely on their best player, Will Fuller on the outside. In my opinion, one of the best receivers in college football. He already scored 3 or 4 touchdowns this year. He had 15 last year. Tremendous player, breakaway speed.
Yeah, he's going to be an important player for the Irish moving forward after his 1,000-yard campaign last year. He's averaging 133 yards through 2 games. So obviously the Irish need some players to step up, and he's one of the guys who needs to do it.
With these key injuries on that Notre Dame offense, do either of you guys seeing this Notre Dame team being a contender come bowl season?
No, last week I picked Notre Dame to win it all. I'm not going to completely back away from that pick, but I'm going to have to take a look at this new offense with Deshaun Kaiser at the helm before I confirm
I don't look at them as a favorite. Not that I did before, but I don't think they really appear to be a top 10 team at the moment. They do have the talent to prove some people wrong and win some games, but I don't see them as a top 10 team at the moment.
All right, well, let's move to what many consider to be the game of the week. We had the Oregon Ducks visiting Lansing, Michigan to take on the Spartans. Patrick, what do you think? What do you think of that game?
Well, we saw Oregon going up against a big physical defense, and they had trouble on 3rd and 4th down converting on those short yardage plays. They got pushed around a little bit by Michigan State. It's obviously a much stronger team compared to Oregon's speed. So I don't think it hurts Oregon too much. They did move a little bit down the rankings. I believe they moved to number 12 in the new rankings. But a loss on the road to a top 5 team won't – it's definitely – they're still eligible for the college football playoffs. So I could still see them making a run. But obviously it hurts their chances.
Yeah, you know what? I had Michigan State in this game, and I think it's obvious from anyone who watched it that Vernon Adams is no Marcus Mariota. This is a team that is really missing Mariota. Obviously, Mariota played really well this weekend. But I think this sort of speaks to a bigger trend in college football. We see these fast-paced offenses that like to put up big numbers. And I think over the last couple of years, when we see these type of offenses match up with some more traditional a team like someone there. A team like Michigan State, we saw. I really think that the teams who run the ball better, who control the clock, are really being more successful. We saw this. Michigan State was able to edge out Baylor in the Cotton Bowl last year. A bit of a different storyline in that one. But also I think another point here is Oregon against Ohio State in the finals last year. Oregon's style, they win a lot of games in the regular season, but when they face against these really strong teams that can control the clock, I think we're going to see them struggle.
Yeah, Connor Cook is a guy that a lot of people saw as a potential Heisman frontrunner going into this season. After this game facing another top 10 opponent, what did you think of Cook?
Well, he put up decent numbers, nothing overly impressive. Oregon isn't a great defense, but they're not terrible as well. I think Connor Cook, to me, isn't an Andrew Luck or Marcus Mariota. I don't think he's a first overall pick. He might be a first round pick, but he's a decent quarterback.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's probably the best pro style quarterback in college football right now, but I don't really see him as being much of a Heisman contender. I just don't think he's going to put up the numbers this year.
All right, well, why don't we move to the SEC here? We had a big matchup. We had LSU visiting Mississippi State. I'll start with you, Patrick. What did you think of that game?
Well, we saw LSU classic run game from the Tigers in their season opener after missing their opening week game got canceled. So they came out on the road against Mississippi State and ran the ball really effectively. Mississippi State had trouble running the ball against LSU. We see LSU, a lot of strong guys. They're a big, tough team, both on offense and defense. It's going to be difficult to run on them. They're definitely contenders in the SEC.
Yeah, I think this is really what we all expected from LSU. This is a team that isn't going to get strong quarterback play. We saw they only passed for 71 yards in this game, but they're just working Leonard Fournette, probably the best running back in college football right now. He scored 3 touchdowns, 160 yards. I think this is the LSU team we're going to see. They're going to be a tough team to beat in the SEC with that strong running attack, but I don't see them going too far.
Yeah, one number that really jumps out to me here, Dak Prescott had 52 passing attempts on the day. What do you think the pass-heavy offense tells you about this Mississippi State team?
Well, it's a little different from last year. Last year they had Josh Robinson running the ball. He's gone now. And even though Dak Prescott can run the ball, we didn't see much of it, including the sacks. He had negative 19 rushing yards. He did score a rushing touchdown. But they're going to need to change their offensive identity this year, and I don't see them performing the same on offense as they did last year.
Yeah, they're going to struggle offensively, losing those weapons Patrick mentioned. They don't really have a running back that they can turn to. They sort of try to do some running back by committee here, but their most rushing attempts was 10 from Ashon Shumpert. Not really impressed with this Mississippi State offense.
All right, well, why don't we move to that Oklahoma-Tennessee game? It was one of our quick pick games last week. We saw this game go to overtime, where the Sooners ultimately walked away with a 31-24 decision over the Volunteers. It was an exciting game to watch. Aiden, what did you think of that performance?
Yeah, it was. You're right. It was a great game to watch. I know this Oklahoma quarterback that you've been raving about,
Baker Mayfield,
one of the better young dual threat quarterbacks we've seen this year. I know he came in there. I saw very impressed with his play, and ultimately he was able to lead his team to a victory.
Yeah, he made a few mistakes, throwing 2 interceptions, and his completion percentage was below 50%. So there's a lot of room to improve for Baker Mayfield. But obviously he's got some talent, and hopefully we can see him perform well for Oklahoma moving forward.
Yeah, something impressive about this kid. This is a guy who was a starting quarterback at Texas Tech, where he won Big 12 Rookie of the Year, I believe. Had disagreements with the coach there, decided to transfer to Oklahoma, and ended up taking over Trevor Knight's job. Trevor Knight is completely healthy, which is what many people don't realize. And this young Baker Mayfield is taking his job over right there.
He did do a good job on the ground as well, rushing for 46 yards and a touchdown. So,
yeah, I think Tennessee's defense had a really tough time in that fourth quarter there, obviously letting Oklahoma get right back into the game. Bad penalties all around from the Volunteers. And I think that's what led to this big comeback by Oklahoma and ultimately the victory.
Yeah, I think Tennessee might be a little bit of an immature team, a lot of young players. They got a good young running back in Jalen Hurd, but they definitely need to learn how to finish games in the fourth quarter.
All right, well, let's move to that Boise State BYU game where we saw the Broncos fall to the Mormons from Provo.
The Cougars.
35-24 decision. BYU, for back-to-back weeks, threw up another prayer, and it was once again answered. Aiden, what impressed you most about that game?
Yeah, I was joking with you earlier that I might become a Mormon after these 2 wins for BYU here. Obviously, they've won on 2 Hail Marys. This win definitely not as impressive as their one last week at Nebraska. But you know what? This is a BYU team that's got a pretty manageable schedule the rest of the way. Winning that one against Nebraska, I wouldn't be surprised to see them if we see them in the conversation towards the end of the year, just because of their schedule that they have ahead.
Yeah, they're a contender to possibly go undefeated this year. I don't see them going 12-0 and making the college football playoff. I don't think they play a good enough schedule to make the college football playoff with one loss, so they need to go undefeated. I'd expect them to lose at some point this year, but see Mangum, the young quarterback who stepped in for Taysom Hill, he looked good in the limited action he saw week 1, but looked even better week 2, despite the 2 interceptions. So room for optimism for BYU there.
Yeah, seeing Taysom Hill go down this year, I didn't think BYU would have a chance to win, any games at all. He was a real standout there. Obviously, I'm exaggerating when I say any after I get that distasteful look from Aiden. But to see BYU move into the 19 spot, I believe, in the most recent rankings, that's very impressive for a team that's, missing their superstar.
Yeah, and I think Patrick sort of touched on it. The youth we're going to see at the quarterback position from them. We're going to see some great stuff, but we're also going to see some mistakes. 2 interceptions. They're just lucky their team was able to get a win with that.
Yeah, and they've been relying a little bit on big plays. His yards per completion for Mangum was almost 20 yards. And see, the top receiver, Mitchell Juergens, had 172 yards on just 4 catches. So they've been getting those big plays. So they need to learn how to play a little bit of small ball too.
Patrick, I know before we move on, you're going to want to talk about that USC victory, just smashing Idaho. What did that game hold?
We saw USC improve in some areas that they didn't look too good on week 1. Pass protection was the big issue week 1. That was really the only issue, giving up 5 sacks to Arkansas State, who then, by the way, last week they played a pretty good game against Missouri, almost pulled off the upset. But we saw the pass protection for USC came together, no sacks allowed. And I heard Steve Sarkisian say that USC got in every single player who was eligible to play in the game, which means all walk-on. Everyone who wasn't injured or redshirting played at least 1 snap. 14 different players caught passes for USC. So we see a lot of different guys getting in there, which is good news.
Wow, with all that variety, we saw Cody Kessler still throw for 410 yards. Patrick, is he going to be a Heisman winner this year?
Well, I think he's definitely going to be a Heisman finalist at this point. At this point, he would be my pick for the Heisman. He's number 1 for me. He's going to put up big numbers. This is going to be likely a pass-heavy offense. USC loves to hit the big plays. They got receivers who can run deep routes and catch the ball deep, and they're going to throw it at least 30 times a game. So he's going to put up the numbers, and if USC gets the wins that they should get, he'll definitely be in the conversation.
All right, well, now let's look ahead to this week's games. We've got some big games on tap. We've got Mississippi visiting Bama in Tuscaloosa. Aiden, what are you looking for there?
Yeah, this is going to be a really intriguing matchup to watch. Really, in my opinion, the first real test for Alabama. Obviously, that game against Wisconsin, a lot of people thought it was going to be a good one. But I think this SEC West matchup with Ole Miss should be a really intriguing one. I think what we're going to see from them is we're going to see if this high-powered offense is still going to be successful against a really strong SEC defense. And to be completely honest, I'm not too sure what we're going to see from Alabama. I think that there's still some questions at the quarterback position. Jake Coker looks like he's pretty much secured that job. But this is a really strong Ole Miss defense who I believe pulled off the upset in Oxford last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did. They pulled off the upset last year, and this year Ole Miss's offense has looked incredible through 2 weeks, putting up over 70 points in back-to-back weeks. It's been a long time since that's been done. Don't remember the exact year, but they could give Alabama's defense some trouble. Obviously, Alabama's a veteran defense. I don't expect them to give up a ton of points. So I think it's going to rely on how Lane Kiffin and Jake Coker – how Lane Kiffin calls the game and how Jake Coker performs and makes decisions for Bama, and that'll decide the game.
Right, we know Lane's going to have this offense firing on all cylinders. That Alabama high-powered offense. I think that's going to be the matchup of the game. The Alabama offense against that Mississippi defense. Let's move to the Georgia Tech Notre Dame game. That's going to be in South Bend. I know we're going to have a 3 Mics exclusive angle on this game, if you will. A couple of the members of the show are head down there. Aiden, what are you looking for this weekend?
There's so many questions surrounding the Notre Dame offense. But I think the key matchup for this is going to be their defense and whether or not they can defend that lethal triple option that Georgia Tech brings. Justin Thomas, I've said it before, my Heisman favorite right now. And I think really the issue for Georgia Tech is we've seen them put up huge numbers in their first 2 games, but this Notre Dame defense is completely different than Tulane and I don't even know, can't remember who they played in week 1.
Alcorn State. Great
Yeah,
one.
exactly. Alcorn State is no Notre Dame defense. We saw this Notre Dame defense struggle at times against Virginia on Saturday, but I think there's so many returning starters they have. Talked about it before. 10 of their 11 starters returning, plus they got Kavari Russell coming back from the suspension. I think that you're going to see a really disciplined defense, and they should be well prepared for this Georgia Tech offense. I think it's just going to come down to whether or not they can stop Justin Thomas.
Yeah, I think, the strength on strength will be Georgia Tech's offense versus Notre Dame's defense. Georgia Tech's put up averaged over 450 rushing yards through 2 games, obviously not against a couple great defenses. But they're definitely a high-powered offense that Notre Dame will have trouble with. I think Georgia Tech should be able to move the ball, but they won't get a ton of points in Notre Dame. The big thing here is how Deshaun Kaiser fares in his first start with Notre Dame and how Notre Dame's offense does without Malik Zaire.
Yeah, it's really too bad to see Malik Zaire go down last week because this otherwise would have been a really exciting matchup. I think that Georgia Tech, frankly, is going to stomp over this Notre Dame team, this highly injured Notre Dame team. Both teams healthy. I think this would be a much more intriguing matchup, but I think Notre Dame shorthanded is just too weak at this point. Sorry about that, Aiden. All right, well, let's talk about that Cougars team. They're in Los Angeles this weekend to take on the UCLA Bruins. Patrick, we've got UCLA, big rival USC. What do you see in there?
All right, UCLA beat UNLV last week, and they've looked pretty good. Freshman quarterback Josh Rosen he's been passing for a lot of yards, and UCLA is looking like a good team. Haven't really been tested much yet. They played Virginia, and they played well against them, but it wasn't really a close game. So we'll see how BYU and their miracle offense comes against UCLA. I'm cheering for BYU in this one.
Yeah, I think we all are. You know what? I'm really excited to get the chance to watch this young QB Josh Rosen play a little bit more. He's quite the talent, really. We'll see if BYU can keep this magic rolling.
Yep. Let's see if another prayer gets answered. Finally, let's go back to another SEC matchup. We've got Auburn visiting LSU. That game's in Baton Rouge. Aiden, what are you looking for there?
Going into the season, Auburn was a team that a lot of people had picked to win the SEC and make it to the college football playoff. Not a very impressive performance we saw last week against
Jacksonville State.
So many questions surrounding this Auburn team. Gus Malzahn, one of the best coaches in the country, if you ask me, but I don't really see Auburn winning this game. I think we talked about this LSU rushing attack earlier. I love Leonard Fournette. It's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, Auburn definitely struggled last week. They should not go to overtime against a team like Jacksonville State. And LSU, we saw, despite only starting their season last week against Mississippi State on the road, who had already played a game, they were able to come out and get an impressive win. I think LSU wins this and wins it big.
All right, well, let's segue that right into our quick picks. This week we're picking 3 games. Let's start Mississippi at Bama. Patrick, who you got?
I'll take Ole Miss to pull off the upset on the road. I like the Rebels' offense. They'll be able to move the ball, and I think that Jake Coker has some holes in his game that Ole Miss's defense can exploit.
I completely agree with Patrick. I like Ole Miss on the road in this one.
Wow, I'm going to go with Bama. Roll Tide, roll. Lane Kiffin is a god. I'm taking Alabama there. Georgia Tech at Notre Dame. Patrick, who you got there?
I like Georgia Tech and their triple option offense. Justin Thomas will run for a lot of yards, and I don't think Notre Dame's offense will be as good as they have been in recent weeks. I'll take Georgia Tech.
Yeah, you know what? I like Notre Dame in this one still. I think it's going to be a really close game. 2 of the best teams in the country, in my opinion. We'll just see what. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I've been back and forth on this game. so much over the last couple days, but I think, kind of weighing everything out, I think Georgia Tech's going to walk away with the victory here, even though it's in South Bend. I just love that triple option offense. Yeah, go Yellow Jackets. Okay, finally that moves us into Auburn at LSU. Patrick, who you got there?
Yeah, I don't really know why we're picking this. LSU at home. LSU is going to win big, win by 28.
Wow. Yeah, I got LSU as well. I think it's going to be a much closer game, but I said it earlier, love Leonard Fournette. Not too sure about this Auburn team.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go against you guys here. I think that Auburn team is gonna play much more inspired than they did this last week against Jacksonville State. Probably don't even know their nickname. Well, LSU, they're a big name team. It's much easier to get fired up for a game like that than it is for when you're playing an FCS opponent. I'm gonna take Auburn here.
That's all we got.
All right, is that all we got for today? Well, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay up, 3 Mics Nation.